this is a character action game, so it kind of makes sense that you control only one character, because that one character is meant to be possessed of so many capabilities that they alone should be enough. But it's important to recognize that Clive himself is not possessed of anything other than a sword and a dodge. Everything else he gets from the icons that he equips and the abilities that flow from them. Therefore, you could have had a situation where party members were also able to equip these icons in the same way Clive can. And you would have had a party-based system that better leveraged this ability-focused combat system. There are over 3 dozen abilities on the ability map, but Clive can only equip 6 of them at a time. There's so much left on the table, and had your party members been able to be kitted out the same way Clive can, I really believe this would have greatly enhanced the depth, breadth, and replayability of combat, while also reconnecting to that party-based combat thing that has historically been so central to the Final Fantasy franchise. The other thing that's missing is any sort of strategic angle. Final Fantasy games have always reveled in their elemental magics, with enemies having certain weaknesses to some, being resistant to others. There was white healing magic, destructive black magic, harnessing magic of enemies, blue magic, buffs, debuffs, there's all sorts of stuff. And Final Fantasy 16 has absolutely none of that. That's not a huge deal, but at the same time, wouldn't it be cool if you had some respect at the start of boss because you knew that boss was weak to fire magic, and it would have encouraged you to use some of those abilities you wouldn't otherwise use, push you to use those less efficient abilities because they're more efficient in the context of this boss's elemental weaknesses. It's also just kind of lame to be beating on a firebomb with fire magic. In any other Final Fantasy game, that would be healing the firebomb, but here it just makes no difference at all. Final Fantasy 16's combat feels even less strategic when we look Final Fantasy 16's combat feels even less strategic when we look at the supporting progression and itemization systems. And that doesn't take very long because there aren't any. It's just progression. You level up, which gives you some raw stats. You can't allocate those stats in any way. You get some ability points, which you can use to unlock new abilities. And upgrading them further allows you to remove them even when you're not using the aligned icon. So for example, I can have removed abilities equipped even if I don't have remove himself equipped. That's it. That's really good to get in terms of progression and customization. You get the speed grid of 10, or the drop system of 14 or 12, materia system of 7, the junction system of 8. None of that is itemization. Man, this one really fucking sucks. So you have 3 gear slots and 3 accessory slots. If you're using any of the story mode accessories, then they actually take up those 3 slots. So you potentially have 0 accessory slots available to you. The other accessories you get are mainly to reduce the cooldown timers on your abilities or increase their damage by like 10% or whatever. It's all pretty enough, and I actually think reducing cooldown timers on abilities is a bad thing because it makes your combat rotation feel even more crowded than it already is. You have slots for a belt and some wrist guards. They have some defense HP on them. The HP, by the way, it represents approximately 1% of your HP pool. Like, I'll have 2,000 HP and I'll be wearing a belt that gives me 20 HP. So, you know, we're dealing with items that buff our stats by 1%. Swords. Man, what a bummer. When you beat major bosses, you get to craft these sick-looking swords, and you imagine that they might have some elemental alignment, such that if you're using the Ramuh-inspired lightning sword, that your lightning attacks will deal more damage, or add some awesome modifiers like chain lightning to your basic attacks. There's nothing like that. The new sword you get is like plus 5 damage versus the previous sword. That is literally it. I'm not exaggerating, it's just that. I know previous Final Fantasy games have had similarly basic itemization, but they've also had a raft of other RPG customization systems that 16 doesn't have. Plus, it just feels like Clive's choice of sword should be more interesting than it is given this combat model. You will absolutely feel the same thing when you play it for yourself. This core itemization doesn't just limit combat, it also has flow-on impacts for side quests and exploration. Side quests were already pretty dull, but they're totally unrewarding since there's no gear system to funnel these reward materials into. I run around collecting hundreds of sharp teeth or leather whatevers, and I have no use for any of them because there's nothing to craft, and even if there was, all it would give me is like an additional 1% HP. So we've got a character action game in Final Fantasy 16. Think about what was traded away in exchange. No party members, no elemental weaknesses, no buffs or debuffs, no meaningful progression, no itemization, no RPG in a Final Fantasy game. And this is a critical point to understand. Final Fantasy 16 is not RPG great action game. And they say, well, yeah, we always use PvP, but I knew that this would have character action combat, but I never imagined for a moment that all of the supporting RPG systems would be ripped out of one of the most iconic RPG franchises of all time. You're going to tell me that that's an upgrade? I don't think it is. I think it sucks. I've spoken a lot about how much Final Fantasy 16 ignores this franchise's legacy, and probably deal with a lot of that. Taking the RPG out of a mainline Final Fantasy game, that's just too much for me.
Allow me to double slash! Our strategy here left much to be desired.
At the top, I said the Final Fantasy 16 offers three things: climb, combat, playing mechanics. Reputation is a really big deal, and I don't want to gloss over it. This is really, really beautiful game. Artistically, I just want to drink it all in, because these game locations, those cinematics, cutscenes, framing of this action, it is really remarkable. The fact that it's always been a hallmark of Final Fantasy games. cutting-edge presentation in this aspect, Final Fantasy 16 is 100% faithful to that legacy. The load times are a real standout actually. There are basically no load times when playing this game. That's impressive when it involves selecting a node on the map and then you're there like 2 seconds later, but it's more impressive in the way it supports the transition between combat and cinematics. The game is constantly moving between the two so quickly. The only way you can tell is that the playable sections have less graphical fidelity than the cutscenes, not by a lot, and always looks great no matter what you do. Performance is another matter entirely, and sadly this is one area where Final Fantasy 16 does disappoint. It offers 2 modes, full capability at 30 FPS, as well as performance mode with scaling resolution targeting 60 FPS. I've played this both pre and post the game on performance patch, and I gotta say, that patch did absolutely nothing. Performance mode is very rocky, particularly during exploration. During combat, it actually seems fine, but when you're walking through the more linear main mission environment, the frame rate can really chug out. It's an observation that Digital Foundry is dropping into their coverage as well, so if you want more detail on that, be sure to check out their video. Bottom line though, it's definitely not a deal breaker, and walking away from Final Fantasy 16, you're more likely to remember its incredible locations and spectacles than you are its frame rate studies. So you might notice that I titled this video Review. This sounds like I do not talk about that. I mean, the truth is, I don't really recommend this, but I know that if I put out a video with that title, people are going to accuse me of clickbait or being contrarian, mistake reviews, all that stuff. All that stuff that I'm very used to right now, but I'm particularly sensitive here because I know how much this series means to people. And I don't like making videos where I'm like, hey, you know that thing that you really like and you're really excited about? It's actually not very good. I genuinely hate making those types of videos. That is why I come back to that thing that I said at the start. Don't worry about what I or anyone else thinks. If Final Fantasy means something to you and you're excited for this, you should buy it and play it, or at least seek out a bunch of other reviews from people you trust. There's every chance that you're going to love this. Do not let my take rob you of that. For me personally though, I do not like this. I really did not. I found myself disappointed by almost every aspect of it. Individually, outside of its combat, I think its components are underbaked. Think of how much the side quest design could be. The moving world design, the custom characters, the progression and optimization systems, where it's just a full mission design amazing. There's no innovation across any of those core elements, and many of those elements come with fundamentals. In aggregate, I think the result is a game that feels really dated. Modern cinematic, story-driven action games have made great strides in fusing world design, dynamic storytelling, exploration, and character progression. Final Fantasy 16 reflects none of that modernity. Its combat arenas and its cutscenes, that's it. Final Fantasy games have always strived to be cutting-edge game design. They haven't always been successful, but they've tried. Final Fantasy 16 just learned nothing from the character action combat and its presentation. I'm sure more than a few people are going to be like, dude, you're just pissed off that this franchise has evolved, whereas you just want it to stay the same. Look, Final Fantasy games have always been about evolution. Think about how bold it was to build these elaborate worlds and then toss them aside in each new entry. Think about the total rebuilding of combat, progression, itemization, and RPG systems in each new game. Think about how fearlessly the series has moved from steampunk sci-fi to high fantasy and back again multiple times now. Hell, 2 of the mainline Final Fantasy entries are MMORPGs. The series has always evolved, and I've always loved it for those evolutions, even when some of those were clumsy and didn't pay off. But in each of those mainline entries was another lines that grounded the series and made them connected to one another, even when they were not different. And it wasn't just, oh, there's a character named Sid and some crystals. It was more foundational elements, party and companions, big world to explore, full of things to discover, combat that rewarded strategic thinking and preparation, and a set of RPG systems that let you shape your character. Final Fantasy 16 doesn't have any of that stuff, and so I don't feel like this is an evolution. I actually feel like this is a massive regression. Too many things that make Final Fantasy unique have been stripped out here, and very little has been put in to replace them. I asked myself, what if this was the future of the Final Fantasy franchise? Well, I think that would be a real shame, because we've lost one of the most iconic, distinctive RPG franchises in the history of video games, and in its place, we've got an action game with some flashy combat and cutscenes,
I want to
but
bury my
not much
face